Hi, welcome back to OT Unleashed Student Takeover. I'm Katie Peterson, and I am thrilled to be continuing our adaptive gaming podcast series today. Today, we are going to be diving into game accessibility solutions, focusing on those built in features that make gaming more inclusive for people with motor, vision, hearing, and cognitive differences. I'm back with Erik today.
Hey Katie, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to continue our series, and I love this episode today because we're going to kick off kind of several different episodes that will take us into, adaptive controllers, buttons and switches, mounts, and all that stuff. But today we're going to really kind of start with that kind of foundation, which is going to be really fun. So, like as OTs in general, like we want to look at that whole person, their abilities, their environment, just all the things that make them them, their activities are important to us. And really, when it comes to gaming, our goal just in general is to try to remove barriers, right? So if we think about the clients that we're working with, I always look at it through like an ability focused lens. So there are going to be barriers for some people, but if I kind of remove my mindset of seeing the barriers, then all I see is the ability. So as we're going through some of these things today, I want you guys to be thinking about, their abilities as compared to their barriers. But let's talk about kind of, again, we talked about leisure and accessibility, and let's just kind of kick off the whole discussion. We're really kind of what all that means in a gaming context.
Exactly, Erik. And we are going to be going over a lot of different things today. So we're going to make sure we link a lot of things in our show notes and make sure it's not overwhelming. And you can always ask questions below, making sure that we spread the knowledge to everyone in the best way possible and it's not too much. But just look below if you have any questions too. But yes, accessibility is the vital component for our clients to be able to participate in everything that's meaningful to them. And gaming is not just entertainment, it can promote social interaction, the cognitive skills, and even physical rehabilitation. And over the years, we've seen this significant advancement in technology that supports our accessibility. So let's just get started with looking at like those motor control solutions. And like
Okay.
Erik said, we will be diving deeper into like mounts and switches and the adaptive controller. So we just want to do a basic overview of some of those built-in features right now, but we will be hitting on those in the future episodes. So stay tuned for that as well. But we want to look at really what defines motor control. And Shell and Gillen define motor control as the ability to regulate or direct the mechanisms essential to movement. So many individuals with motor impairments face challenges that can hinder their gaming experience. Erik, could you elaborate a little bit more on how motor control impacts gameplay?
Yeah, of course. Motor control is kind of what a lot of us think about kind of right from the get-go. And, I think that if we think about it, first things first, a lot of video games are played with a traditional controller. So, like, if you look at this, if you're watching this, you're seeing I'm holding an Xbox controller, and typically what we play with is two hands, and really kind of your thumbs and your index fingers are our primary kind of weapons to attack a controller. So, if we're thinking about gameplay in general, there's a few things that you have to consider. Like, the first is, do I have the ability to like hold the controller, right? So that's kind of that first attack, right? So I have two hands, I can hold the controller, so that's a kind of a big part of it. But on top of that, I don't only just need to hold the controller, I have to be able to press the buttons, and there's a certain amount of strength that comes with that. So not only the strength to hold the controllers, but to also activate the triggers, the buttons, and whatnot. And so there are a lot of algorithms that'll tell you exactly how much pressure that it's going to take how many micrograms that it's going to take to be able to activate a controller itself. So you have to be able to hold it. You have to be able to move the triggers, but also you have to have certain amount of motion. So like if you're using your thumbs, you have to be able to do like radial abduction, palmar abduction. You have to be able to have finger flexion and stuff like that. So even if you have two hands and you can't move certain things, then you're going to have a barrier there. And whatnot. So those are some of the things to keep in mind, like when you're trying to play traditionally, right? So if you don't have some of those things, then you have to start thinking about, well, what are some ways that we can either supplement that or potentially replace that? And so that's when a lot of these like external buttons or external switches or analog sticks and things come into play. So some people don't have access to fine motor control. Some people will need to use more gross motor movements. So like think about your amputees that don't have a hand, or maybe like even a stroke patient who doesn't have that coordination or that fine motor. Those things are going to be things, that you have to consider when we're looking at that motor control itself. And so kind of to kick everything off, that's the kind of first piece of that motor control that we're looking at, and then at the end, timing will end up being something like you have to be able to not only press a button, but you have to do it within a certain time frame. Like there is a lot of requirements for a game to be able to be played. And so you want to make sure that you can do it in the time required. So some games have a little bit more requirements, some have a little bit less. And so you have to kind of consider all those things. So not only the movement itself, but what is the game asking from you within that time limit. So there's a lot of different things to kind of understand.
Yeah, it definitely goes back to that whole like client-centered approach and really looking at the abilities of our clients and making sure we make things the most accessible and their ability to manipulate the games so they can, participate in a way that's,
Yeah.
they don't have to necessarily modify the game, but they can modify the way that they're playing the game, enable them to participate in it. But those are definitely some excellent points. And it's definitely important to remember that physical disabilities can range from mild to severe, and how individuals engage with the gaming itself. And definitely in our upcoming episode, we are going to be talking about the evolution of the adaptive controller and how that has shifted in the ability for our clients to be able to access based off their motor. But let's kind of transition a little bit now into kind of that cognitive aspect and the executive functioning part of it. So cognition really encompasses all forms of knowing and awareness, perceiving, remembering, reasoning, problem solving, and those are all different skills that are crucial for fun gaming and the whole experience when it comes to gaming. So when players may have difficulty with cognition or even completing those simple tasks in a game, it can feel very overwhelming. And we want to make sure that we're looking at that as well when it comes to their accessibility in playing the game that they desire to. So Erik, what are your thoughts on the cognitive challenges that gamers might face?
Cognition is tricky, right? So the cool part of cognition is that I think cognition really is a space where developers on the industry side can really manipulate, right? So this is stuff like executive function. This is stuff like, hey, are you doing this fast enough? Are you able to work through certain complex problems? Are you able to do what the game is asking you to do in the time it's asking you to do it? So, for example, like there is certain things that you have to remember in a game, like, okay, so a lot of games are built on, it builds on small tasks and says like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to jump. And then you start mastering the jump, and then now I'm going to have to teach you how to jump, and then you're going to float, and then you're going to jump and float and kick, and then you're going to jump and float and kick and spin, and then so all these things start to kind of build on themselves. So a lot of games are built where they almost grade the activity for you. So in the OT world, we do a lot of grading, like either making it more challenging or making it easier based off of your ability and your understanding of the game. So I'm playing a game right now that's called Mio, M-I-O, and it's a beautiful little game on the Nintendo Switch. And it starts out where you have a very simple controls. And then as you progress through the game, the controls become a lot more complex. And so you have to stream together a lot of kind of moves to be able to achieve certain, challenges. And then when you're fighting little bosses, they're easier at first and they become more challenging, right? So within the game, sometimes if you are having issues with somebody being able to complete a game in a cognitive space, so maybe you're able to mash a button, and hit. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I need to hit and dodge and jump and then fly and then all these other things, like those parts are going to be, spaces that say, I need more from me, and if you have a cognitive deficit, you might not be able to do that, and so that's something that we'll have to kind of navigate, just in general. So there's also some spaces where you're like, hey, I have some things I have to come back here, maybe there's like a task that you have that is like, okay, this is here, but I can't do this right now. I'm going to have to come back to this. And you have to be able to remember to come back to that. So it's really crucial for game developers to like incorporate features that pull down some of these barriers and really that are adjustable within the game themselves. And so, if you're a therapist or somebody that is working with somebody with a cognitive deficit, I would definitely look into and we'll go into cognition a lot more in a further episode, but you want to look into see what possible barriers could I pull away in that cognition space that could enable them to play and complete the game. Because the last thing you want to do is really frustrate that person and, make it a space where they're like, I just don't want to play this game anymore,
Yeah.
And that's a problem, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to make sure that you're hitting on that aspect. I feel like that's like one of those things that some people don't think about, how cognition plays such a crucial role in
Yeah.
their ability to perform the game, especially if there's like the complex narratives in the game, or again with having multi steps to try to complete an action within the game.
Yeah.
But it does seem like many modern like gaming consoles are starting to really offer comprehensive accessibility settings like navigation aids and waypoints and mini maps, to kind of help negate some of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things that we have been seeing have been causing difficulties with our
Yeah.
patients that have some cognitive deficits.
Yeah.
So this kind of will help guide the players throughout those more complex environments, which is very beneficial for those with the memory or attention
Yeah.
challenges. So having kind of like a checkpoint that you can go back to, so you don't lose all your progress in the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, for
But I
sure.
think that, I mean, you've already touched on some of those kind of games that you've been playing right now, and that's great that they're able to kind of already grading it within the game and moving up
Yeah.
as you get more familiar, which I think is an awesome new thing that gaming
Yeah.
is coming to do.
Yeah, and honestly, to touch on that, like the nice thing is because developers have seen this. I mean, like you see games like Red Dead Redemption 2, like is a popular game, but and you touched on like waypoints are a huge part of it because it takes a little bit of the risk out. Like you can trial and error a little bit. Like so, if you were to like you go in and like, okay, I'm going to try to attack this challenge, and you lose, you don't go to the beginning of the game. Now there are games that actually are like that, and they are really cognitively inaccessible. So game developers out there, it's really important to have these built in so that you could easily kind of work back and into it, and try again. So it's not such a huge issue if for some reason, you die, or, you didn't solve the puzzle right away. So, so that's a good point, and another game like Super Mario Odyssey, they have like an assist mode where it's like if you are having, challenges with the mechanics, like you can switch on the assist mode and it can really enhance the gameplay for somebody that might have like a challenge or might not be able to kind of do that, So, and honestly, there's so many more things to it. I mean, even like setting easy mode to hard mode is a huge part too,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I know that, at some point in time when, you're playing a game and, a big part of playing is like you want to be challenged, right? But
Definitely.
sometimes the challenge is almost too much. There's this almost toxic culture in the gaming world where it's like you need to be in the most advanced settings. So like, for example, like, playing, some of the recent Star Wars games, for me, like, I want to know the story. Like, I care more about the story than like feeling like I was on Jedi Knight Grandmaster setting. I was like, just put me on Padawan, which is like
Yeah,
easiest level, because I just want to like mow through the whole thing. And
absolutely.
it's actually a cognitive accessibility feature. My one of my colleagues is an engineer who loves to game, but he's getting into his 60s, and he said he wants the old geezer mode, because he's like, I just can't go as fast as it needs me to go, and I
Yeah.
can't do the controls as quickly as I once could. And so having the old geezer mode gives me the ability to still enjoy the game, but also see the story and see how it plays out without getting too frustrated.
That makes
So,
total sense. And it is great to have that option to lower the difficulty that can help alleviate that frustration, because you still get that sense of accomplishment without,
yeah.
being overwhelmed, and you still are able to complete the game the way that you want without the added stress of, it being super difficult. And
Yeah.
I think that that's like such a great feature that we're now seeing in a lot of games, is it's not like, all right, everyone has to be at the same cognitive level to complete this game. We can lower it
Yeah.
and make it a little bit easier, just to help with the everybody's different, like, and that's
Yeah.
what the beauty of now with more accessibility standards and regulations with the gaming coming out. It really helps for individuals with cognitive deficits to have that ability to still complete the game, which I just think is
Yeah.
awesome. What do you think about the role of difficulty promoting
Yeah.
overall engagement in these games?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's huge. And honestly, I feel like every game could have an option for difficulty settings, or some kind of cognitive load, and that's what we kind of talk about in the rehab space. Cognitive load is kind of a big part of it. It's like, can I actually do what it's asking me to do, and so, like, think about like turning on like a light, as simple as turning on like a switch, right? It's a small cognitive load and it's on and off, right? But if you were to like want to turn on your thermostat with your phone, I mean, it's a little bit harder. You have to like turn on your phone, select an app, find the right, thermostat setting, make sure that it's on heat instead of cold, or what, right? So cognitive load really kind of affects a lot of people in different ways, right? So if in the gaming world, cognitive load is going to be basically like, what do I need to do in this game? If you're playing a pretty advanced like role playing game and you need to know all these different type of small little pieces, like like Pokemon's also a good one. Like, so if you were to play Pokemon, you need to know like certain types, or certain types of Pokemon are more effective against other types of Pokemon. So the cognitive load, like, you're gonna have to memorize, all these different types of Pokemon and what their weaknesses are and what their strengths are, as compared to just like, well, this is a big one, I can go and fight anything, So
Yeah.
I always like games that I really like. If you have a client that has maybe a cognitive deficit or something, I would start them off with something simple with low stakes. Like, all the Lego games are beautiful, right? And first of all, they're so much fun. They're silly, low stakes. You can always get through it. And even if you die or fall off a cliff or something like that, it just respawns you right there. You don't start over at the beginning of the level. You just start right there. And the only thing that you lose is maybe some coins that you had, and so
Mhm.
you keep going, you don't lose weapons, you don't lose items, you don't lose anything besides maybe a couple little coins, which is not a huge deal, right? So like that's a low cognitive load type of thing where you can just go through, mash buttons, and get through the story like you want to. So being able to kind of go to like an easy mode, and you were talking about easy versus hard modes, like again, I think it's really great to have these difficult modes for gamers who want to be able to like achieve something more than just like a story. But there are gamers out there that just they just want to achieve the game. They want to
Mhm.
finish the game, and sometimes that is like having an easy mode. It doesn't affect the hardcore gamers at all. It just enables the game to be able to be played on any level.
For sure. And
So
like even gamers could go back and replay if they want a more challenging experience, like after they completed it in easy mode, they could always go back and, do it in a different mode if they felt
yeah,
comfortable, maybe wanted a little bit more of that
yeah,
challenge.
yeah, exactly.
Which I think it's really almost like occupational therapy built into
Yeah,
the
it's
game, which
totally,
I think
it totally is. It totally is. And that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, we grade the activity, and in a game, you might be able to grade the activity. It's the same way.
Yeah,
So
and I've
it's a good
also
point.
seen like some of the games now have like practice modes or even like they add
Yeah,
like game hints and a bunch of tutorials on how to do something to kind of
yeah,
also incorporate some of that
yeah,
cognitive relief and
yeah,
ability to complete the game. So I
yeah.
think that those
And
are
those,
really
and
great features
actually,
too.
that's a really good point, because like if you were to take one of those games and you were like in a treatment session and you only had so much time, maybe don't engage them in an entire story, but maybe give them that training mode or tutorial, like, hey, let's just work on jumping today, or let's
Mhm.
just work on how this mechanic is, and you can do it through that tutorial with, again, low stakes, and you just learning. So that's a great point.
Absolutely. And that just helps, like these features just really help the players build up their skills at their own pace and
Yeah.
really work at the level that they're at. And we can always build on top of that, which I think is just awesome that these games are starting to incorporate the cognitive aspect on top of the motor skills.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so besides cognition and the motor skills, like there's also a lot of features for audio, hearing deficits, and even
Yeah.
vision. Because, for a lot of games, those like the way that the game is presented, the visual aids, the graphics, the audio are really crucial, but people are starting now to kind of know that like we have gamers who have visual deficits or hearing deficits that are also wanting to play this game. So how is that kind of being incorporated
Yeah.
as well?
I'm actually excited to dive deep into this in future episodes, but we'll keep it on kind of a lighter level today. But this is a huge part of gaming right now. There's a lot of conversation with deaf gamers, blind gamers, low vision gamers, and the ability to manipulate a game to make it accessible for them. And that's everything from like low contrast modes, so like, let's say, for example, you're playing a game that is you have enemies in it, and but there's so many other distractions in a game where it's hard to see, or maybe it's too dark. You can literally toggle a setting in the settings menu that basically just shows like the good guys and the bad guys, and that way you can eliminate all the distractions. Maybe there's like you need to desensitize the game a little bit so that you can just be able to play it, and so there's these low contrast modes where you can be able to play. Matter of fact, there's like Left 4 Dead 2 was such a huge game that really defined the future of accessibility for games, and really is kind of this landmark where a lot of developers kind of go back to see like, oh, okay, I want to make sure that I not only incorporate a lot of these settings with for low vision and deaf players, but I enhance them, make them even better. And so on vision, you can do everything from again, low contrast, high contrast modes. You can do you can toggle, text to speech. You can text for, even for our deaf gamers, you can do how big the subtitles are, or how big the closed captioning is, or you can do what that looks like. So, instead of just having words, small words at the bottom of the screen, you can make them big words with maybe some kind of black banner behind them, so you can read them better or hear them, and you can have audio, text to text to voice or text to audio, or and any of those things. And so the nice thing is, and again, when we talk to developers and whatnot, when we're looking at those types of things, we're talking to them about saying like, hey, look, if you start to build your game with these things in mind, it's going to be such a better result than if you build the game and then later try to like modify your game to make it accessible. So, we're always talking about like build it accessible from the beginning, and then it can be, a lot more, a lot easier to kind of manipulate as you go. So, yeah, those are some good things. I can't wait to talk about that more in future episodes.
Definitely. And I mean, you're talking about like the game itself being more accessible, but also like the specific gaming consoles are really starting to try to implement those features in their newer models and making big strides. Xbox and PlayStation are both have come a long way from when
Yeah.
they first came out with their consoles, and
Yeah.
really emphasizing more accessible features like those screen magnifiers, those high
Yeah.
contrast modes, the customizable captioning, and just
Yeah.
really trying to, aid to visual and audio hearing
Yeah.
accessibility. So I just
Yeah.
think that these tools are great, and that they really ensure that all players with any type of impairment can really immerse themselves into the gaming experience, which is
Yeah.
just, it's beautiful to see as therapists, and to really help like anybody who wants to be a gamer, like regardless
Yeah.
of what's going on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and honestly, like I think we're gonna try to get some of these gamers on our episodes, that have vision deficits, have hearing deficits, because I think it's important to kind of hear their perspectives, to make sure that there's a phrase that we use quite a bit in the industry that says nothing about us without us. So if you are going to go into doing accessibility or whatnot, like you don't want to create something without the people involved that you're creating for. So whether it be motor control, cognition, sensory deficits and whatnot, all those things are kind of huge to those stories. So they make a difference. They're going to help you not make mistakes and whatnot. So I always encourage you to, again, nothing about us without us. So for
Definitely.
sure.
And listening client perspective is really what pushes the difference in the next step for gaming accessibility and accessibility for anything. So just really listening to what these people have to say, and these individuals make the impact, and we can
Yeah.
advocate for them, but having their perspective is really what matters. um,
Yeah.
I love hearing all these stories and how game accessibility technology advancements have really helped them be able to participate in it. And
Yeah, well, that's what we want to do, right? This is kind of like why we jumped into the biz of helping people in general, right? And I know a lot of OTs and a lot of other therapists out there, a lot of times gaming gets kind of the back burner, but for some, gaming is life, it's everything. And so, like, if you want, you don't want to, like, minimize something that is so important to somebody, so if this is something that's important to them, it should be something important to you. So yeah.
well, and we've talked about kind of those built-in features too, but
Yeah.
we could also look at the environmental factors at home, like how it impacts those gamers with visual impairments or
Yeah.
motor control impairments. So like the positioning of things and moving the screen closer and adjusting the lighting and all those factors play a pretty important role as well, and how we can minimize the distraction space itself to enhance the overall enjoyment of the game too. So just kind of looking at those spaces to support those players.
Yeah.
Have you like worked with any clients that you've kind of adjusted their gaming space to help them be able to participate in whatever
No.
game they want to?
It's honestly every single client. Like every single client's going to have a different setup. They're going to have different needs. They're going to have different abilities. And so really it's all custom. So it's just like any other client that you would work with normally. Like you're never going to make a splint the same splint twice. So you're never going to, have the same exact stroke. You're going to have different clients with different abilities. And so really it's super important to be able to say, hey, look, before anything else, I need to be able to kind of sit back, understand who the client is, understand what their needs are, their abilities, and then to adjust fire accordingly. And so, so sometimes it's going to be like need more mounts. Sometimes like I make a whole like game center for them. Like, okay, so this is where you play video games. You're going to kind of roll up into this and you're going to do this and you're going to be like that. So it's always like going to be something a little bit different for everybody. But once you get there, and it's going to be a lot of trial and error, there's going to be a lot of failures, like even like an adaptive controller. So like, this is the Xbox adaptive controller, which we'll talk about, and I think next episode, a lot of the adaptive controllers. But this particular controller like has multiple settings on it, right? And so like even just this piece is going to be different for different games. So if I'm doing a driving game, it's going to need a different setup than if I'm doing like a Super Mario Bros. Game, where you're going to have to jump and, jump on Goombas and hit coin blocks, right? So you're not doing that in driving games. So built into this adaptive controller is different profiles. So it can have a driving profile, like a side scroller profile, or a first person shooter profile. Like you can have different profiles. So even within each person, you're going to have different setups as well. So there's definitely, there's a lot to learn, but like I just was working with a client, a young client with the spinal cord injury. I want to say he's like 17, 16, teenager. And he was like completely devastated, obviously, that he couldn't hold a controller like he did before. And so we started to do different setups, and he loved driving games, but also loved sports games. And sports games are challenging. And so we had different profiles that he would set up. And so I left him to it. I taught him the basics and let him use and borrow kind of some of these adaptive controllers for a week. And then I came back and he had mastered it. I mean, it was like impressive, but he wanted it, right? And so like, give him the basics. He's going to do a lot of trial and error. If he needs my help, if he needs like some extra, like, how do I map this button or controller, like he'll reach out to me, but they figure it out, and that's the whole point of games. It should be a little bit challenging, should be a little bit difficult, but once you understand your abilities, then you can really kind of thrive from there.
And everything is customizable. Everything should be for the individual because everybody is different and their abilities look different. So making it as accessible as possible is the overall goal. And these features have really helped, those challenges, and, using the adaptive controllers can really aid with that as well. And those, modifications that you can make to the environment as well as the actual built-in system really can make a world of difference in advancing and enhancing our clients' participation and engagement.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to it, and I'm glad that we actually have dedicated episodes that will go into some of these a little bit deeper. But, this is a great overview. It's a great kind of like kickoff to some of the other ones that we'll be talking about. But there are so many different areas that we could like work on. And we even talked about mental health. There's some other things that we'll kind of pop into and whatnot. But, start here and then we build on it, right?
Definitely. There's so much, and we wanted to just give a basic overview, but we're going to be linking a lot of, different things in the show notes below as well, because like we said, we can't just, we don't want to hit on every single thing in this episode, or it would be hours and hours long, but
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
but giving you guys a basic overview to help support the clients with diverse needs and really help understand how there is already built-in features and how to adjust the environment itself just to get started. And then we can really go into those finer details of how to adjust the controller and mounts and splinting and positioning and all
Yeah,
those really awesome things that I can't wait to talk about in the upcoming episode.
awesome.
But yeah, it's been awesome really talking about these features with you and hearing your insight and all the different games and examples you gave and client perspective. So thanks again for sharing
Yeah.
everything, Erik.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure, and again, I'm excited to get into it. So we'll sign off for today, but like there's going to be so much more to come, and we'll break down some of these other little ones that we had talked about, or some of the categories, I guess, in the upcoming week. So thanks for having me, Katie, on the Student Takeover. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
For sure. Thanks for listening to OT Unleashed Student Takeover, and we will see you next time.
All right, see ya.